My slides got advanced a little bit there without me knowing. Good morning. Guten Morgen. I'm Margot Bloomstein, and I'm really excited to be here with all of you. This is, I think, my third CS Forum. I missed the first one in Paris when everybody was there with the volcano going on in Iceland and all. Woo, yay. Volcanoes are exciting. I missed that fun, but I'm excited to be here today instead, where we don't have a volcano, but we will have a lot of other exciting things to be talking about. So when we talk about our profession of content strategy, I think we also have to talk a lot, focus a lot on just learning more about ourselves, what we offer in that context, and whether we want to define that broadly or really very, very narrowly. Whether we want to see the industry moving forward in a very broad and kind of free-ranging and general way, or if we want to see it moving forward on a much more narrow and constricted path, and then what our path is ourselves within that. But before we get there, I want to talk instead about 1888 in Wieslach, Germany. I don't know if this is a town or a date that rings any bells for anyone here, but this is where Bertha Benz stopped off one day in 1888. Does that name ring any bells? Not even for the Germans. I'm surprised. Okay, so Bertha Benz, you might recognize her last name. She was married to Carl Benz, one of the founders of Mercedes-Benz. Before she was married to him, though, she was the primary investor in his little fledgling automotive company. And she had been hearing how he had these great ideas and was always tinkering away, building this new kind of vehicle, this new horseless carriage. And she believed in his vision so much that one day she was like, "That's fine, Carl, but I want to take this thing out for a spin. You've been working on it for a really long time. I want to see how well it works." And prior to then, they had been testing the vehicle and whatnot, doing some different tests around the facilities, around the mechanics shop and all, but they hadn't really ever taken it out for a spin. But she decided that she was going to drive the first long distance in an automobile. She drove about 100 kilometers. She wanted to go visit her mother, so she loaded her kids up in the back of what was basically a three-wheel early prototype automobile and went out for a ride. And she realized some things along the way. One of the things is that just because you have a car, just because you have an automobile, does not necessarily mean that you have everything you need to get to your destination. She soon realized that she was running low on fuel. She needed to stop off, and she needed to stop off someplace quickly to fill up the car. So she ended up stopping in Wieslach, and she stopped into the city pharmacy because she knew there that pharmacists frequently worked with petroleum ether. And that's something that many pharmacological companies and many pharmaceutical firms still work with on massive scale. But back then, pharmacists worked with petroleum ether. They used it in their work, and it also happened to be the fuel that this early automobile ran on. So she stopped off at the pharmacist, at the city pharmacy, and in doing so, made that city pharmacy into the very first filling station that day. So today, we still say the very first petrol station is there in Wieslach, Germany, at the city pharmacy. Now, stopping off at a place and saying, I need this functionality from it, I need to rely on it in this way, sort of transformed the meaning of the place for her. She said, okay, we need to think bigger about what a pharmacy is. Maybe it's also a place that we stop off as a filling station to fill up the car, a petrol station here, a gas station in the United States. If we fast forward several years, now 1909, Altoona, Pennsylvania, that's where in the US we opened up the very first gas station. It's still running, as many things in Pennsylvania from the early 1900s are. This gas station is also still running and in use. And it still serves drivers today. And it's a pretty standard place. You can go there, get gasoline. You could also refill, maybe check the pressure in your tires, add more air to them if that's what you need. In 1913, they decided, all right, people are going out on these longer car trips and all. We should also start offering road maps. So not just gasoline, but now road maps, and we're going to do some sort of fuller, more complete kind of tire service as well. So they started adding products to their definition of a filling station. They started saying, okay, what else can we offer? What else will really meet the needs of our customers? They kind of expanded the definition a little bit. And over time, over the many decades since then, we've continued to expand on that definition. Now, most filling stations, most petrol stations offer road maps, tire service. Maybe you can get new windshield washer blades. There are some that are more full-service stations, some that are considered modified service or attended pumps, where maybe somebody won't wash your windshield, but they will fill your gasoline for you. There are some that are just self-service, if you don't need somebody to pump the gas for you and you just want to get on your way. There's some that offer squeegee service for your windshield, others where you can go in, maybe get a bite to eat as well. These things have continued to grow and change over time. So now, some places that you drive to, especially in the US, you might see gas stations like this. The Promised Land Grocery. Doesn't it really look like a place that you'd love to stop off there too? I don't know if you can read it in the back, but it says that they offer meats, not meat, but meats, all of them apparently, beer, wine to go, because you wouldn't want to just hang out there and back drinking it out of a paper bag probably. Hot dogs, not as good as the Frankfurters you have here. These are more the hot dogs that sort of spin around on a little heating element, kind of boiling in their own grease for many days. It's not exactly a delicacy. Also school supplies, clearly you want to get them there. Fishing supplies, and ammunition. USA. It's a really kind of classy joint there, you know. So this has become, for some parts of their target audience, for some customers, for some people that are going out for a drive, this has become the idea of a gas station. It's a far cry from where Bertha Benz stopped off that day, but it meets the needs for a certain group of people, for a certain target audience, also for a certain context. If you're driving through town and just need to pick up gas quickly, that's where you stop off. At the other end of the spectrum, though, is a place in New Jersey, Delaware, and some parts of Pennsylvania called Wawa. Now, Wawa is a chain that is near and dear to my heart. I heard tales about this place long before I ever stopped at one from friends that had grown up in the areas where they have Wawas. And I have to say, the first time I visited one, I was like, this is lovely. It was clean. The bathrooms were even clean. The food was good. They make your coffee exactly how you like it. There are people that work there that are invested in creating a good experience and all. They come out and pump your gas. It's beautiful. Recently, I had the opportunity to drive down to a client in New Jersey. I live in Boston, so it's about a 3-hour drive. They were just outside of New York City. And when I say that I had the opportunity to drive down to New Jersey, I freely admit, most people don't typically describe it as an opportunity. But I knew after I had set up that meeting with my client, my first thought was, I get to go to a Wawa. This is fabulous. So I was pretty excited to go there. And even a couple of years ago, I stopped off at one. Again, it was kind of coming back from a client meeting and clearly felt the need to tweet from a gas station. But it's great. I mean, there's this wonderful experience, even if you want to order coffee off of like a machine and whatnot, where you put in your order, you can say if you want whipped cream in it. No, it's lovely. It's a really kind of nice experience at a gas station. Now, this isn't right all the time. It isn't right for, say, a long-haul truck driver that's just looking to make time. They just want to fill up their rig and keep going. But it's totally right for me driving along in my little Mini and saying, okay, I need to make time getting home tonight, but I've got a 3-hour drive ahead of me. Let me stop off, get a bite to eat, get coffee that's actually really good, fill up my car, all of those things. You can do that all at a Wawa. Now, over the past several decades, the gas station industry has continued to diversify. They've also merged into convenience stores as well. There are dozens of different brands in a space that really is kind of a commodity. I mean, when you think about it, the gasoline that you put in your car, the petrol that you put in your vehicle, it's not that different place to place. But you can see, and this is just a sampling of a dozen different brands from around the world, we've figured out different ways to take this commodity and differentiate it by the different services that different places offer on top of the main core product, or by putting different spins on it, maybe tailoring it to the needs of different audiences. Flying J, they're basically a truck stop that's in the Midwestern US. It's great for truck drivers. They can get in, maybe get a shower if that's what they need, and get out quickly, or spend the night parked in their lot because they've got really big lots. But on the other hand, I mean, a place like Sinclair, that's also in the Midwest, and it's a much more kind of tailored, kind of kind, very pleasant experience. They offer other amenities. So we've figured out how to differentiate that commodity. And in doing so, we've created a product that's right for different kinds of target audiences, as well as for different contexts. We've been able to say, all right, depending on who you are, what sort of persona you fit, there's a gas station for you. Now, when we look at the industry of gas stations and convenience stores, I did a little bit of digging. So the National Association of Convenience and Fuel Retailing, or NACS, because they used to be the National Association of Convenience Stores, in the US, they put out these kinds of reports. And first, they take the opportunity on their website of defining exactly what their industry does and exactly what a convenience store is. So they say a convenience store that's got several gas pumps and whatnot fits this definition, that it's a place where you can quickly purchase a wide array of food, gasoline, and services. They don't define it any more narrowly than that, but they also don't define it any more broadly than that. They said this is what people in our industry, what other brands in our industry, other retail outlets, this is what they have to have in order to fit our definition. Now, in one of their recent reports, they said, basically a convenience store is, on average, 2,400 square feet of packaged consumer items. But then they also go on to say, but today there are many different types of stores. There are the mini stores under canopies that might be kind of like parked on the edge of a larger parking lot. There's some that offer expanded food service. There are others where you can come in and there's in-store seating. We've really kind of diversified the industry. That report concluded with something else. They said that while we traditionally define this space as that 2,400 square feet, where we see the most growth isn't in that traditional model, but in all of those other edge cases, in all of the other ways that we're trying to serve our different target audiences. That's pretty compelling. I think it says a lot about our industry as well. We can learn from that model. That was just not my opportunity to advertise Wawa here, in case you're ever traveling in the Midwest or that part of the US. But I think we can learn from that industries are able to thrive when they differentiate, because both the buyers and sellers of services benefit. Both people that are trying to say, all right, where do I want to stop off and fill up my car or fill up my truck or maybe have some place for my kids to run around at a roadside rest stop. Both people like that are buying that service, as well as people then that are trying to sell that service and differentiate their commodity. By finding our little nuances, we're able to better serve our target audiences. It allows me to say as I'm driving along, all right, where do I want to stop off today? What's really right for me and what's right for my context right now? So about a year ago, I had the opportunity to talk with an organization that I was really, really excited to work with. They had contacted me kind of out of the blue, but I knew what they did. They're in the financial services space, and they said that they needed help with messaging and workflow and editorial training. I was really excited, because within the realm of content strategy, those things are all squarely in my wheelhouse. Those things are all basically services that I tend to offer to a lot of my clients. So I was really excited to work with them. We talked again a few days later, and I was like, all right, it feels like, what I offer and what you're looking to buy, those things seem to closely overlap. That's a great thing. But then we talked a little bit further, and they said, well, what we really need is editorial training specifically for social media. And I said, okay, that's, again, fairly close to what I offer. I don't specialize in content marketing, but some of my best friends are content marketers. And I can certainly reach out to them if I have any additional questions to help you meet your needs and all. That's great. So I felt we still had a fairly decent overlap. And then they dropped the bomb. On the next call, what I heard was, we don't just need help with financial services, we need help with mid-market institutional investment. I don't know about you, but I don't really know what each of those words means separately, even before they start to combine them like that. And as we were on this phone call, I start Googling, and I was like, oh, I can totally still help you with this. And I'm like, what the hell is mid-market institutional investment? It was a scary conversation. And the way we resolved that conversation, rather than me saying, oh, yes, of course I can help you with that, I can build up that additional expertise, when they were looking for somebody that was really seasoned in that area, instead of going in that direction, what I ended up saying was, you know, I don't know that I'm the best person for this. I think what you're trying to do is great, but you need someone with a lot more expertise, a lot more specialized expertise, both in your industry and with supporting content marketing for your industry. Let me refer you to someone else. And with that, it was like a huge weight came off of my shoulders. I wasn't scrambling to figure out information about an area where I just didn't have the years of experience they were looking for. And they weren't trying to force fit me into their budget without really thinking, all right, are we going to have to spend extra time maybe reviewing the work that I would be providing, that type of thing. Instead, I was able to send them to someone else. I'm sure that person was very happy to get the work. My would-have-been client, my prospect there, they were happy to find someone else. And I was happy to really not have to worry about it and focus my attention elsewhere. Oh, sorry, I should have advanced there. That was me kind of like running from, oh, we have overlap, to I'm getting my part of the Venn diagram way out of here at that. So that brings us to that issue. When we talk about content strategy, it's tough to acknowledge that sometimes we don't all have the same areas of expertise. Sometimes we don't all have experience in the same areas, and that's okay. We can define our profession broadly and still explore narrow areas of expertise within it that are unique to the individuals that our industry comprises. So when I think about what I do as a content strategist, this is typically how I describe it. I tend to focus a lot more on communication goals, message architecture, that type of thing. And then helping them figure out, all right, based on that message architecture, how are we going to then move forward through editorial training, figuring out the right style and tone guidelines, right content types, all of that. That tends to be where I focus. And when I think about a definition of content strategy, this tends to be how I describe it to other people. I maybe take that kind of core definition and then also add the idea of having content be brand appropriate in there, because that's the lens that I bring to our world. If it's appropriate, yeah, we can maybe make this a quote. This is how I'm comfortable defining content strategy. But that isn't right for everyone, and I am totally okay with that. This is how Christina Halverson first defined content strategy in her groundbreaking article for A List Apart in 2009. She's since built on this definition a good bit. She's kind of running with it now in other areas more focused on business strategy and all. But at the time, this was a good working definition. Now again, that's not right for how we all practice content strategy, but it's kind of a good broad capstone. I reached out to Rachel Lovinger and I said, all right, what you do at Razorfish, how do you practice content strategy? This is an analogy that she published several years ago, and I think as far as using an analogy to define our work, it tells us a lot. When she looks at it more closely in her actual practice at Razorfish, she tends to focus not on the editorial and messaging stuff that I do, but rather more on organization and structure of information, how to bring that then into a CMS, to go from a content management system to then getting the right content in the right places, and also focusing on the metadata that we were just hearing about. So that's another good working definition. But there are so many others within our profession, and I think that speaks to the breadth of responsibility and breadth of perspectives that we bring to that. I spoke with Tiffany Jones-Brown. She's at Pinterest, who we'll be hearing from a little bit later at CS Forum. She says, yeah, I'm a content strategist, which is here really a fancy way of saying a writer who also has design and marketing skills. She's talked a lot about how in her role there, she's almost like a magazine editor, figuring out, well, what's the right content to bring in? Where are they getting it from? How are they making sure that it's fresh and on tone and all? Carrie Mahala, she also defines herself as a content strategist, but in a very different way, where she focuses more on that kind of partnership that we have with our clients and the companies that we serve. Hava Liebtag, she also focuses on that idea of partnership. She describes herself as a content strategist, as a management consultant. Did we ever think that when we were coming from maybe other traditions in copywriting that we'd be talking about management consulting? And yet it makes so much sense for how many of us, not all of us, but for how many of us practice content strategy. Elizabeth McGuane, also, she talks about being a fulcrum within the different parties that she has to mediate, within the different disciplines that she cuts between as a content strategist. And again, a lot of her work is focusing on business and culture long before she even gets to content. I went from Elizabeth in the UK to Sally Bagshaw, who some of you may know, who's a content strategist in Australia. And she talks about, again, content strategy being similar to being like a business analyst for content. It's a very different perspective, certainly than the one that I bring to it. I think certainly different from the one that Rachel was bringing to it, but also equally valid. So when we talk about content strategy, we're talking about a lot of different definitions. In the recently published Language of Content Strategy, Rahel Ann Bailey, who I think some of you were at her workshop yesterday, she talks about defining content strategy like this. Again, another good working definition, but certainly not the only one, especially for the very many different ways in which we practice it. So again, we can look at that model of gas stations and convenience stores and say, if we take this big thing that we all say we're doing, how are we going to differentiate within it? Should we be trying to differentiate within it? Yes, of course we should be. If we acknowledge that we bring different skill sets to the table, different areas of expertise, it means we cannot have one single monolithic definition, but rather we need to acknowledge that there are many within it, and that that's both good for people that are selling the service and people that maybe are in client organizations, maybe CMOs, content marketing managers that are looking to buy the service. We need to have more specific and precise definitions to talk about what we're doing in order to be able to do it effectively. But that only happens when we embrace that kind of precision, when we're able to narrowly define both what we do as individuals and accept that there are many different definitions within our broader umbrella of content strategy. And then when we also encourage that diversity among other practitioners, not to say, how dare you not be me? How dare you not practice it exactly the way I do? But rather to say, no, that's good. You do you, I'll do me. You run with what you're doing. Because there's opportunity and really an appropriate amount of work for us all to be filling those needs with those different definitions. Now, in contrast to that, you've probably seen the job descriptions for content strategy, and I hope none of you here are from organizations that publish descriptions like this. So this is a real job description. An organization looking to hire a content strategist, and if you go here, if you are the lucky person that accepts this role, listen to some of the wonderful things you'll get to do. So you can drive development and organization of content. That's kind of baseline stuff. Also, create user flows and information hierarchies and wireframes. That's kind of like, okay, you're not just a content strategist, but you're also an information architect. Run with that. Maintain fluency in industry terminology to develop our voice within it, because you're going to have plenty of time to be keeping up with all of that, with all the work on your plate. Determine content requirements, inventory existing content, maintain a current content audit. So again, kind of baseline content strategy stuff. Also, you have opportunity to be creative with all of your extra time there. You can creatively look for opportunities to improve content, consumer experience, and SEO performance. That is all on your plate as well. Also, manage an editorial calendar and training. You are also in charge of training internal copywriters, external freelance copywriters, developing those necessary training programs. So at this point, and we're only about halfway through, you're a content strategist, you're an information architect, you also have expertise in developing training programs. You're good at all of those things because you're a content strategist. Let's see, also you develop analytics, conduct consumer and usability testing, so you've got talent there as well. Project management, you lead projects working working with PR and Marcom. You're also working with internal customer service. You've got time for that, apparently. And then as you continue your 80-hour work week, oh, you also occasionally write or edit content. So you're a copywriter. You're an information architect. You do actual content strategy, training, project management, all of these things. And apparently this job also comes with vacation time, which I'm sure you'll have time to take. What do we say to that? We say, hell no. No, that's a bad idea. It's bad for the people that might go into that kind of role because they're looking for that sort of quote-unquote unicorn. But it's also bad for companies that might say that this is something that they actually need. The problem with it for companies that put out this kind of job description is that, again, they lack the specificity. They're saying, we want everything. So they're never going to find somebody that can do all of that, or at least well. So maybe they get somebody that can do a lot of it in a kind of average way. Or maybe they get somebody that can do a few things really well, but not the other stuff. And there's a lot of waste in that then. Maybe they bring in somebody that's good at a few things, but they're not actually the things that they need on a specific project. Maybe they need to have more of a specific and precise definition of their own goals there too. So without having that kind of definition, without having that kind of clear differentiation in also what we're trying to hire for, the hiring process or the process of even pitching your own work, pitching your portfolio, becomes really difficult. It's really time-consuming to constantly have that conversation of like, oh, that's not quite what we're looking for. Tell me more about this. Okay, wait, we actually need talent over here as well. Also, if you do bring someone into that kind of role, somebody that maybe is that sort of content strategy unicorn that can do all of these things and do them all well, think of the stuff that they're not going to be able to do well. Think of if you do have to invest in training for specific needs on that next project. Also, these are the kinds of issues that give content strategy a bad name. When organizations create these kinds of job descriptions and then find out nobody's really qualified to fill them, then oftentimes what I hear is like, oh, we tried going down that route of content strategy, but it just didn't work out. Well, it's because they didn't have a good definition going into it. They didn't have a good understanding of their own needs before trying to fill them. What did they expect would happen? So we also need to ask, and this is something that I hear a lot, if we acknowledge that there are multiple ways of defining content strategy and a diversity of perspectives within it, do we run the risk of diluting the meaning? I like red type, so I'm going to say it again. No, we don't run that risk. I think that's a red herring. I think it's a red herring for any industry that has gone through this kind of challenge. And that's certainly been the case in information architecture and user experience as well. When we get more precise with our words, we don't dilute the meaning of what we're offering. Instead, we free the meaning. We free it to communicate exactly what we do as practitioners, as well as exactly what we need as companies that are trying to hire for those roles. I mean, certainly in content strategy, so many of us are good with our words, or we're training and teaching other people to be good with their words. Well, this is an opportunity to say, okay, we need to use our words clearly to narrowly define what we as individuals do so that our industry as a whole can have that breadth of definition. And there's certainly precedent for that. If we think of the design community, yeah, a lot of people call themselves designers, but then with a little bit of digging, you get to see, well, what are actually their areas of expertise? And there are certainly people that specialize in graphic design, maybe within that just in iconography or illustration or typography. There are people that are lighting designers, set designers, fashion designers, industrial designers, people that just do signage and wayfinding. Those are all different areas of specialty, and we certainly don't expect one person to have expertise in all of them. So then we also have to ask the other question. Well, what does this do to people that are just generalists, that say, well, I'm just kind of a general content strategist? And I think we have to ask the same question then for organizations that are saying, well, I just want to hire kind of a general content strategist. The problem with that is that when we try to fill all of those roles, when we try to kind of be everything for every project, we don't end up doing any of it well. We need to kind of push a little bit further on those job descriptions. We also need to push a little bit further on ourselves to say, all right, what am I really good at? What do I really love within this industry, and how can I further develop that expertise? That's the stuff that helps us better define what we do, as well as the kinds of organizations that we want to do it for, and exactly what those organizations themselves need. So I've got a few takeaways. First, I want to talk to the content strategists that are here. There's 3 things that I want you to start doing differently. First, be precise in what you do and own your definition of content strategy. You don't have to say that, all right, this may not, you don't have to couch it in the things that say, oh, it may not work for everyone and all. Just let us know what you do that's different from other people within the industry. It's good to have that kind of specialty. It's good to have that sort of narrow expertise to acknowledge that there are many ways to do it, and here is how you do content strategy. And as you're doing that, be really specific and narrow what you're looking for within the industry, in your next job, in your next client as well. And here's also the opportunity to be honest with yourself and with potential clients. It's also the type of thing that frequently we hear about, like in improv circles. There's that idea of people in improv always talk about the yes and, that you should never kind of close down a scene by just saying no and walking away from it, but always saying yes, and here's how we can continue to build on it. Well, I think in our own work, it's okay to also say, no, I don't do that thing that you're looking for. And I can introduce you to someone else that does. And I can direct you in another direction to maybe further define what you're looking for, to further narrow that job description. Now, I also want to talk to people that hire for content strategy. 3 takeaways for you, and they are very similar. Again, be precise in how you are defining content strategy, maybe the needs for a specific content strategy role within your company. Is it about editorial workflow, or do you really need somebody to come in and help with taxonomy, maybe help with structuring content for responsive design? Or maybe it's just helping you with messaging. Those are very discrete skill sets that sometimes overlap, but not always in the same person. So be specific about what exactly it is that you're looking for when you're trying to fill that role. But again, also, be honest. It's okay to tell a practitioner, no, you're not exactly what I'm looking for. Your skill set is not exactly right for my needs. And it's also okay to turn to a colleague and say, you know, you're trying to hire a generalist. Don't do that. Narrowly define what we're looking for as a company. And I can refer you to other people that maybe have the right area of expertise. It's okay to have those conversations, although they're not easy. But I think that's what we need to do in order to really move our profession forward and ourselves. We are at a tremendous inflection point, and this is where we can really start to grow as an industry and as individuals. But we need to remember how we are defining our industry comprises our own personal definitions. If we can define our industry as having this kind of breadth, it gives us all the freedom to grow as individuals within it. But we need to start doing things differently, defining things differently in order to do that. Thank you. Oh, and one other thing. I do have a little bit more, if you're interested in more about this, the first link there, and I'll be putting this on SlideShare as well, it's a blog post on my website about defining our individual areas of expertise as T-shaped people and what that means. Also, Jonathan Coleman has a great presentation more on this type of thing, and Cleve Gibbon also had a wonderful blog post on it. So thank you very much. Time for questions? Or no, you can just say.
You were a bit, we got 3 minutes for a question, and as there are so many of you out there, I think you have probably too many questions to have them in the 3 minutes. So I would ask you to approach Margot in the coffee break, which will be very soon. But I have a question that you probably will also want to know, and that's the how. How do you get specific? Because I feel that most of the companies have a vague idea about what content strategy is, because they've done it for classical media, but not so much for the online world. So my question would be, how do you help companies, or how would you say people hiring, can they become specific about what they need?
I would say, so if you're in an organization that's looking to hire for content strategy, first take a step back and look at the needs of the specific project, maybe the first project that you would staff that person onto, or a long-term initiative. And ask yourself, really, what's the nature of it? Maybe compare it to other similar initiatives that have already happened in your company to see, was it really about messaging? Was it about training people? Was it about developing workflow for those people? Was it about developing metadata sets? All of that kind of stuff. I think all of those questions help inform the nature of the work. And then you can also start looking, I think, for other job descriptions that narrowly define what they're looking for like that. There are some good models out there. They're not just kind of that really general one that I shared. So I think those are a couple starting points.
Thank you very much for that. I think that helps a great deal. I think it's also like you would companies to approach any sort of new thing, that they take stock and see what's happening and then make an informed decision, I guess.
Right.
Thank you very much, Margot.
Thank you. Thank you.